I'm Leigh Brown. This is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. And today we go back to the world of squatters. And if you saw my episode with Representative Brian Biggs, that's the one to start with, because now we're going to talk more about squatters. And then we're going to dig into title lock fraud or title fraud. Holy smokes, y'all. There's just so much going on out there. And this is your awareness episode. So enjoy the conversation. I've got George McCleary, and that name sounds familiar. You've seen him on TikTok and Instagram. So enjoy this, and I'll see you on the other side. Fixing your hair. I was just watching you get it all perfectly coiffed with your headphones on.
Leigh, we need to look our best. I feel like that's something you can understand.
I mean, I'm very vain. I don't even hide from it. It is what it is.
I embrace it. That's why I openly fix my hair, looking at myself in the mirror on a Zoom, I suppose.
It gives us the smoothing out factor, which I appreciate as a medium-aged person. And here we are.
Yeah. Yep. I just turned 45 a few days ago, and
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. But these are the things that we contend with as 45-year-old men. So yeah.
That's when you start listening to the ads, Frank Thomas. And so then you watch your baseball heroes selling supplements, and it's a little hurtful.
It is a little bit. Yeah, no, the guy, you stick around long enough, you begin to see just how people age. And it's really fascinating. I feel like that's a perk rather than it's something I really like.
Hey, beats the alternative. I mean, at least we're able to age.
Yes, exactly. Only the luckiest of us. Leigh, I got to tell you, I am a little bit starstruck. I have been watching your stuff. I am a fan. I am like a full-blown fan. I started off as like, I was like, I'd heard of you. I wanted to get on your podcast, but then the algorithm picked up that I was digging your stuff. So it started serving me up to you, as the algorithm does. And here we are. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
That's funny, because I usually have the algorithm shadow banning me. So it's good to know it still elevates me in some places.
I think it knows that we both sort of operate in like a sort of like a space that's like, it's like business and like a little bit of politics as well. And it's down, you got to be like downright subversive to operate in that space, because like you end up pissing people off a little bit. And at least I do, and I'm pretty sure you do too, if I could go out on a limb.
And it's kind of astonishing that they get mad when I talk about policy positions, because it feels like policy should be where we have vibrant conversations instead of personalities. I don't go after personalities. That ain't worth my time. But I do have some very big concerns about policies. I got to cut another long video about this new scam that is being proposed to replace property taxes called BT, land value taxes. It's a thinly veiled scheme to force people to sell their land and farms to developers. And so I've got to finish my rabbit hole research on that before I make my video, because that's going to be guaranteed to bring the trolls and bots out.
Whoa. Yeah, no, that sounds like a big one. But like that's actually kind of what led me to this whole squatter journey, because I'm a real estate agent, developer of 20 years, house flipper.
But you're dealing with title fraud. Like, I need to talk about that, because
we're going to get into that.
Okay, so before we get in, actually introduce yourself to the audience, George McCleary. Tell them who you are, where you're located, the thumbnail sketch of you before we dig in, because I'm so excited to talk about title fraud.
Absolutely. I'm George McCleary. I hail from Portland, Oregon. I'm an investor, developer, real estate professional of 20 years. And what happened to me was I woke up one day back on Super Bowl Sunday of 2024, and I made a video called I Stole a House. And it's about squatting. It's about taking over a house and the ease with which squatters can occupy a property in Portland, Oregon, or really anywhere in the country. It totally blew up. It got tens of millions of views. It landed me on talk shows like Fox News, News Nation, mentioned on Bigger Pockets, articles on Bigger Pockets. Joe Rogan talked about me. It was kind of insane. So my life kind of changed at that point.
I don't know Super Bowl years. What year was that?
Oh, it was in February of 2024,
Okay. You landed on Joe Rogan? Okay, that's you.
It would be pretty cool. He didn't say my name, but he's like, yeah, this guy on TikTok was explaining how to be like a squatter as you break into the house, and he just kind of went through it. And I'm like, whoa, he's talking about me. And like 5 friends, and like the whole world was like texting me and emailing me the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I saw your video. But then other people were getting in touch with me saying like, yo, I've got a squatter right now, or you won't believe what happened to me with my squatter. I lost like $100,000. And I started hearing these stories. And I'm like, hey man, can you Zoom? Because what what I realized was that there's no consolidated source of information about squatters and how to contend with them. So I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to serve an underserved market and to help people. So I started Zooming with everybody that had these squatter and title fraud issues. That's when I discovered what title fraud was, and created a couple products, Squatter Defender and Title Fraud Defender. And now I'm on a mission to go help people not lose their shirt over these type of real estate fraud.
What is that? Lose your shit, but don't lose your shirt.
A
Is that
lot of
your
people
first
lost
part
their
of the
shit over my
process?
video. Hopefully, because of that, they won't lose their shirt.
There you go. I mean, this might be a new tagline for you, and so I'm going to
Yeah,
expect
I'll send you royalties on that, Leigh.
it's easily worth a nickel. All right,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it blew up on you. Tell us a little bit about the scenario. How did it occur? Were there any legal protections for you at that time? And just give us a little bit of backdrop.
So the reason that I made the video in the first place is, so I've had like, let's just call them low level squatters in my projects. So in my development projects, like an addict will like fall asleep on like in the framing or whatever. And it's no big deal. I say, hey, move along. And they usually do. And then in like a flip project, it'll be like an uncompleted house and a guy will like, we've had guys like kind of bust in through the door and that's not cool, but like they usually like understand like the jig is up and they leave. But I'd had some colleagues that had like professional squatters, the people that had like forged leases, put utilities in their name, done like the whole scam, like A to Z. And I just couldn't believe that not only were they getting away with it, but they were not being prosecuted and they were being able to stick around for like a year. It was utterly insane to me. And that was coupled with a lot of policy choices that Portland was making at the time, which I really didn't agree with. So it was starting to overlap with my livelihood. And I was like, yo, enough is enough. And I'd voiced political concerns online, same as you have, Leigh, when things have just kind of bubbled up and you got to talk about it. I did the same thing. And this one in particular just really struck a nerve and it totally blew up.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the progression of squatting because I've been in real estate for a long time. During the recession, we did have a lot of those. Somebody wanders into a vacant house, spends the night, you surprise them, and they leave.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's a whole different ballgame because they do have the upper hand in many situations simply because until last year, there were no protections in any state until Florida started the ball rolling.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was shocked by that. I'm like, well, surely North Carolina has protections. And then I come to find out we have nothing. And the
Nope.
sheriffs don't want to mess with it. And we're going to get our legislation passed. I think we'll get it this session, but it has been so shocking. But you said it led you into, and by the way, y'all, all of his Instagram and all the handles are in the show notes for the episode. So you can go binge to your heart's delight and watch all of the super viral moments and all the educational stuff. But you said it led you into understanding what was going on with title fraud. So share with us a little bit about what that space looks like, because we have not had an episode all of my seasons on title fraud. So I'm super excited that you're bringing this up today.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what happened was, so first of all, I had never even heard of title fraud, but in the course of hearing about people's squatter stories, I heard about a person that had somebody move in and instead of like forging a lease or just lying to the police and like moving their friends and creating like a plausible scenario that they actually lived there, what they did is they actually forged a deed to have themselves on the deed of the property. So you kind of got to figure like this is a dumb criminal. You can't just like file a deed and expect to get away with it. But the reality is that chain of title is set in stone. If you want to mess with it, you can't just call up the recorder's office and say like, hey, this was fraudulently done. You got to fix this. No, they can't just do that. You got to have like a court order. You got to do like an action to quiet title. It's a big deal. So meanwhile, this person's like occupying the house and they're on title. And I was like, well, that's insane. But the ease with which they did that was really frightening because you've seen a deed before and all those stacks of real estate documents loan documents. Among them is the deed, and it's just grantor, grantee, the property address, legal description, and then the notary stamp saying like, yeah, I saw these people sign this thing. The notary stamp, that is the security instrument. That's all that is protecting that document from being forged. And it's a friggin' stamp. It's a stamp. It's not
I took
$100
a notary
bill.
class. It was a one-day class at the community college, and there were people in there that I probably would not give a lot of. I don't know how to say it nicely. So that's that. Well, so,
Notaries themselves might be wonderful people. They might not be, who knows? But
so I can take that document that I see at closing, type it up, have a notary stamp it, and run down to the courthouse. And
I
that's
mean, why even bother having an actual notary stamp it? I mean, because then you've got somebody who's seen you. You just forge the ink, or you forge the stamp. It's a very low level forgery, and then you march it right down to the county. Say, here you go. And depending on what county you're in, they either do dozens or hundreds or thousands per day. So they take a look at it. There's the information, and they record it. So that happened to that person, but then I was like, this is way too easy. I bet this gets worse, and oh, it sure friggin' does. So then you think about like, okay, well, you can like occupy a house like as a deed fraud squatter. What if somebody like forged an ID? So I tracked down a lawyer who specialized in this actual thing, and I was like, yo, what actually happens here? Like, how are people using this for like illicit financial gain? He's like, well, and basically what's happening is people are getting identity thefting people off the internet, getting their social address and everything, getting a fake ID with their name, and then getting the title forged into their name, into the fake name, but with them on the driver's license, so that when they steal the deed, then they can sell the house to a wholesaler and pocket all of the equity.
okay. So wait a minute.
I could explain that again because it's important. Did I lose you?
They have an imaginary name, an imaginary ID.
Yeah, of a real person, with a real social.
Oh, so it's just identity theft, and so
yes, they've identity thefted
they've
somebody.
stolen the ID, put the stolen person on the deed. They've sold the house as the stolen person. They pocket the cash and run away, which is another.
Right.
Wholesaling should be outlawed because this is a wholesaler has no way of checking it. Okay, this is intense. All right. So what about the mortgage? So they put themselves on title. They recorded the deed from Bob and Mary. Bob and Mary owed $300,000 on the mortgage. How does it get recorded on top of an existing mortgage?
So you're not going through title. The person is just going down to the recorder's office and recording the deed. So the lien still remains on the property. And so then when the wholesaler goes and opens up, because any wholesaler, any new buyer is going to open up escrow, and they're gonna pull title and say like, okay, looks like title transferred, a few weeks ago, because the thief makes sure like it worked, like title transferred, and that usually takes a few weeks to update, and then they put it into escrow, and the escrow agent says, okay, looks like title just transferred like a few weeks ago. Got a mortgage from like a previous owner. Oh, no, I assumed it's subject to. That's where you take over the loan payments for somebody else. It's against the loan. It's against the terms of the loan, but investors do it all the time. There's like courses on it. You can see about assuming subject to. Yeah, no, I just assumed the loan, but it's worth like $650,000, right? So just, use the proceeds, pay off the loan, and go ahead and wire me the rest of those proceeds, and we're good to go, right? It's like, oh, the escrow's like, okay, are you who you say you are? Yep. I got the ID right here. And when you send your notary over, it'll be a perfect match, and we'll have a nice real notary, and everything will be just fine. And they're like, cool. And the wholesaler wants to get it through because you're giving them a heck of a deal, because that thing has a property value of like $1 million, and like, oh yeah, I'll sell it to you for $650. So you pocket the equity, and out the door you go.
So this would not be allowable then in states where wholesaling is outlawed, right? So in Kentucky, where they just passed a piece of legislation last year, no wholesaling.
Well, it could be anybody it could be a wholesaler. It could be you, Leigh. They could call you up, and somebody says, yo, I'll sell you this $1 million property for $650. I got to get rid of this thing. You'd probably buy that property. And
no, I'm a skeptic. I'm too cynical. They have to call somebody who's not cynical. But yeah, so oh my God.
People will call realtors. People will call realtors and be like, yeah, will you sell this? This is a big problem.
The ID matches the fake name on the fake ownership chain of title.
Yeah. So they'll call up. Sometimes they'll call up a real estate agent, but a lot of times they won't do that because it gets publicly listed. And if it's publicly listed, the original owner might find out about it, or a friend might be like, "Oh, hey, Sally, you're selling your house? Wait, what? No." And then they get tipped off. So that's why they will go to a wholesaler or just a private buyer and be like, "Hey, you want to buy this house?" So it's irrelevant whether or not wholesaling is legal or illegal. It's just finding an end buyer very quickly and doing the transaction privately, so that it doesn't actually go public and people don't get tipped off.
Okay, so when Sally does get tipped off that her house is now for sale by somebody she has no knowledge of, what is Sally's next step?
So the company that I started, Title Fraud Defender, basically what we do is we just monitor your title, because unless you want to push refresh on your county website every single morning with your morning coffee, it's going to get a little cumbersome to make sure that your title isn't being transferred. So if you find out that your title's been transferred, so that's not a bad thing, but that's damn near impossible to prevent, because the way that things are recorded, you just can't put a stop to that. But what you can put a stop to is people stealing your equity, and they steal your equity by reselling the property. So you stop them from reselling it. You sound the alarms. You file an affidavit of false filing. You call the title company. You red flag it with a little procedure that we outline in Title Fraud Defender. And so at that point, the jig is up, and they're not going to be able to sell the property. They no longer have marketable title. So you've accomplished that, which is great. But then you got to get title back into your name. And the way you do that, unfortunately, you have to hire a lawyer and file an action to quiet title. And that is what changes the chain of title back to you, back to the way it was before. But it's a lawsuit. You gotta go through it. There's no two ways about it.
So I'm going to eat legal fees because a scam artist snuck up into my property and put it in their name. So is there a way to prevent this at all? Because I know I can't remember the name of them, but there's somebody that advertises on the Sirius XM Patriot channel that I listen to a lot. Mm-hmm. And they talk about how you can, is it Title Lock? I can't remember the name of them. But
so Home Title Lock is, it's essentially the same thing as Title Fraud Defender. That's just title monitoring. There's no way to it's a bit of a misnomer. There's no such thing as like locking your title, like kind of like freezing your credit. I know, darn right. So there's no way to prevent somebody from stealing your title. There's just no way to do it, because the way that our recording system works for literally every county in the country is you just walk into the recorder's office with a piece of paper. And someday I'm hopeful that this will change, and it will go on blockchain, and there will be checks and balances. But today is not that day. Tomorrow doesn't look good either. And as of now, you can't prevent it, or at least nobody has given me any credible way that you actually can prevent it. So Home Title Lock, they're selling what we're selling, except for they're $20 a month, and we're like a few bucks a month.
So if you're in real estate and you're listening to this podcast or watching it and thinking, man, I need some more Leigh Brown answers in my life. Well, guess what, friends? I have a new program that is launching right now called Answers.Real Estate, where I will give you every bit of insight I have to help you grow your real estate business, help you better respond to consumers, to provide a more excellent real estate experience, so that the next time you land on crazy shit in real estate, you'll have a better solution to whatever you ran into. Answers.Real Estate. There are monthly plans available. You will love it. Get your coaching. Sign up with me today. Okay, so I'm panicking a little bit now because I own rental properties. And so I need to watch rental properties in multiple counties and multiple states. When every state obviously operates differently. Some have electronic filing. Some require you to go in person. If you were going to design the perfect filing system for deed recordation, what do you think is the best way to do it? Is it to go electronic and go blockchain and lock down that system, or is it to stay on paper and they check IDs and only lawyers can file it? What's the answer?
I wish I had one for you, Leigh, and I've gotten this before.
Come on, George. This is your specialty, man. We're counting on you. Bigger pockets will put you back on the podcast.
I promise you, Leigh, I've earned like a PhD in squatting and deep fraud over the past like 6 months, and it's been an intensive study. But I guess this is like the next graduate level course I need to take. There are companies that are trying to put this on the blockchain, and basically the best solution that I've heard is putting it on the blockchain and having a system of checks and balances, so that when deed transfers, both the grantor and the grantee are notified and have to sign off on it in a way that's actually verifiable prior to title being transferred. So what that system actually looks like, I don't really know, but I do know that you shouldn't be able to transfer title without having an absolute having surety that the grantor, the person selling the property, knows about it and is good with it, because the only thing they need now is a signature, and there's no way to verify that signature right now. And it's, a notary stamp. Supposedly that's the verification, but it's easily forged. So that's essentially the solution. Is it's on the blockchain, verifying grantor, verifying grantee, and it hopefully is not going to be a cumbersome process, because like I said, like thousands of these get processed every day in America. So it's got to be something fluid. And if somebody has a great idea, then yeah, it's the next, billion-dollar company. But we don't have it as of now.
Well, and I don't know that you can get there because since we're a constitutional republic and every area does things differently, you won't see
Yeah,
conformity there just by the nature of things. But now I'm realizing, so North Carolina has had a spate of land scams, and I think they've been in many states where somebody calls a realtor using a fake name to list a piece of vacant land. They can verify the information. They give us the fake ID. You list the land, and then they want to price it below market so they can get a cheap buyer on. I think they know that land is just not as visible in marketing as houses are. And it can actually close before the real owners ever find out.
before they figure it out. Yeah,
Probably because there's seldom a mortgage or a lien on vacant land like there is on a house. So you take out that one hiccup from the process.
totally. Yeah. So that actually adds a layer of complication for the title thief. So I said before, like, yeah, I assumed it's subject to the lenders have some checks and balances. So sometimes it'll get caught with them because they'll go back to the buyer and be like, yo, what's up? But usually it's done with parcels or properties that have no debt. And so what you're talking about, Leigh, that's like impersonation. You're pretending to be the seller. And whether you have a fake ID or that takes another level of sophistication, but it's not that hard to get a fake ID on the dark web. But you're essentially impersonating, you're skipping that fake ID step and just impersonating that person. And then as long as you got a way to get the proceeds transferred into a bank account, because I'm sure it's the same in North Carolina. You've got to have the proceeds for the person on title have the same name on the bank account. You can't have Leigh Brown LLC sell a property and then transfer the proceeds to Jing Yingping in China. It's without a series of checks and balances.
It's so overwhelming to think about the people that spend their time trying to find a way to scam the system when they could be curing cancer if they would turn their brain to something productive. All right, let's jump back to the squatter side for a minute. So you're on the left coast, and honestly, you guys have issues out there that can become contagious to the rest of the country. But currently, Portland and Oregon have been trying to dial it back because they realize they went a little too far with some of the
Pendulum swung a little bit too far in the wrong direction.
I mean,
yeah.
When you allow all drugs to be legal, you creating a unsustainable.
What could possibly go wrong, right?
Nothing. So luckily they're pulling that back in. But what are you seeing for relief for property owners in Oregon in your experience? Are they looking at legislative action? Is there any is it going to become criminal to squat in a house? Because in North Carolina, y'all can watch the episode with Representative Brian Biggs because he's a realtor and a state legislator. We were talking about the fact that the sheriffs want to treat it as civil. We in real estate want to treat it as criminal because somebody's stealing your property, and that's not civil at all. But it's been
nothing civil about it.
Very vibrant conversation. So what does the conversation look like in Oregon?
So a lot of it revolves around landlord-tenant law, because that's essentially what the squatters are exploiting. If you can get inside a house and establish that you have been there for a certain amount of time, or establish with a police officer that you have some credibility that you do have the possibility that you are occupying the property legally, then you can dupe the police officer into thinking that you actually have a legitimate claim to it, and then you have to go through well, at least people think that you have to go through the court system at that point. And then when you have municipalities like Portland that have very robust landlord-tenant laws that very much favor the tenant, then you've got those protracted periods of time to just essentially kick them out as a tenant. They were never a tenant, they're a trespasser, but people think that's the best thing to do. But what I heard after talking to all these dozens of people after I went viral is that some people didn't go the conventional route. They said, okay, no, I'm doing this a different way. And a lot of commenters on the video, like on X and Twitter, they're like, yeah, I would I would shoot them or I would take them out at gunpoint. And so, of course, I'm listening to this thinking like, okay, like, yeah, you could, but like, I feel like there's going to be some liability if, you're bringing, a confrontation like that into the equation. And sure enough, like there's been a lot of cases where either the squatter or the owner has been either harmed or unalived, as they say, uh, because of the confrontation. And whether it's the squatter dying or the owner, it's not a good thing. So what people were doing a lot of times is kind of operating in the gray. They were like doing things like introducing animals, like, throwing a bunch of rats down the chimney, or snakes was one
What?
of them.
Nuh-uh.
True story.
They
Yeah.
really did that?
Yeah.
That's
It was,
gross. That wasn't just somebody on the internet saying they were going to do it. Legit,
yeah.
somebody did that.
Yeah, no, there's people that did booby traps, bear traps, and then there's I heard all manner of things, and some like some grosser ones that I won't mention, but use your imagination.
It's like your whole TikTok channel is all of these little ways to deal with squatters, because
I was sworn to secrecy by them. Like I can't like actually like go on there and have like, so I go on podcasts and I talk about like, hey, somebody did this or whatever. But like I do make a lot of content about like, squatters and, deed fraud, saying like, hey, this is a problem, just kind of trying to spread the word. But those unconventional methods.
Journalism. I mean, if Chris Rufo can expose what's going on in the school systems, I think you could be the citizen journalist that goes with your little iPhone to all these little squatter situations and says, somebody dumped a box of rats down the chimney. Let's see what happens next. I would watch that channel all day long. And especially if you take some of the traps they used on Gilligan's Island.
Oh, yeah.
You remember Gilligan's Island, where they set some traps for the natives and for animals? I mean, I think it could work for squatters. You can't prove me wrong yet. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, so all those unconventional methods are not only hilarious, but a lot of them have actually worked. And there is like a middle ground, because I tell them in Squatter Defender, like, here's what happened. I can't recommend this, but here's what some people did. But there is sort of like a middle ground that doesn't involve going through the court system. And I talk about that in the course. And there are things that you can do that don't get you in a legal entanglement with the court system. And I don't recommend like confronting squatters directly, because you're dealing with very desperate people, and bad things have happened, and bad things can and will happen. And the same reason that you can't go after these people like with like a civil claim to try and shake them down for money is because they have no money. They got nothing to go after, and you're probably the deep pocket. And if they go after you because you did something, that could end badly for you, not just by physical harm, but like just going after your wallet. And there are lawyers that will be more than glad to do that in any state.
And I don't think vigilantism is generally the best way to go. So I'm more in favor of digging a hole and putting a fake palm frond over the top as a trap, instead of other pathways, depending on which state you're in. I guess I should say that. That's the whole beauty of a constitutional republic. In some states, you probably have different freedoms than in others, but not all states are experiencing huge amounts of squatter activity. How bad is it in Oregon, in your experience? Is it frequent? Is it infrequent?
It's generally worse in blue states and bluer municipalities. There's squatters and title thieves in literally every state, in every city. It's less frequent in multifamily. It's more frequent in single family houses. And you go, so
just because the neighbors will snitch on you?
Yeah, well, put yourself in the position of the squatter. You want to not be discovered, not be seen, and you want to be there as long as humanly possible. So you get to a place with your own four walls. You're not waving to people as you come in and out, and because if you do, then there's a chance that somebody might snitch on you, and there's much more likelihood that someone is going to do that in like a rental house. So if you got a rental house, then, looks like there's a new tenant in there. That's going to be a whole lot less likely than, it could happen in a multifamily, and it does, but single families are most frequently targeted. There's no card swipe to get in or whatever. You just, you watch a YouTube video, you pick the lock, you get in with no sign of forced entry. The cop is thinking like, okay, well, there's no window broken. They didn't break the door down. Like there's furniture in here. There's people. This is a plausible scenario, even though you've got the owner right there saying like, this is not a tenant. This guy's a squatter. Get him the heck out of here. the cop is like, well, got a he said, she said situation here, sir. So, sorry, but you're gonna have to take this guy to court.
I mean, those are the things we've seen online. The people that were in New York, and of course, we're recording this in September, heading into snowbird season.
Mhm.
If you live in a cold state and you go to Arizona or Florida for the winter, you're going to have to be thinking about how you protect your house from being taken over while you're gone. So does your class talk about how to go out of town safely? And can you give us like one of your number one top tip for how to go out of town and not have your house stolen?
For sure. So the Squatter Defender course covers squatter prevention, detection, and ejection. So we talked a little bit about getting rid of them. Prevention, as they say, prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Or an ounce of it. So the number one thing is really just very intuitive. It is an alarm system because you got to know who's coming and going from your property. And so at Squatter Defender, if you buy the course, you get 50% off a Simply Safe system that is portable. You can take it from one property to the next, and it has an alarm like a siren with a keypad, and then a motion sensor. So if someone walks in there, you know about it, and it has a camera. So you can pull up the footage and you can have it notify the police for $25 a month if you really feel like it, but you don't really need to. You just need to have a notification on your phone so that if it gets tripped, you pull up the camera and be like, okay, oh, that's the plumber. Forgot about them. But if you see, Frankie the Stealer coming into your house and kind of looking around all shifty-eyed, chances are he's probably not going to stick around after the alarm is going off. But even if you forgot to, if you forgot to set the alarm, or you got the camera, you can make sure that whoever is going into your house has the right to be there. And if they don't, you're going to know about it quickly, because what you're up against here, Leigh, is time. It takes time for these people to get established. They get into the house, and then they got to move in furniture. They got to establish plausibility so that when the police officer inevitably shows up, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year later, once the owner figures it out, that there's somebody in there, that the cop is going to walk up to an empty house with an alarm going off in the background, a video of the guy, tampering with the lock to get in there. And it's an open and shut case. He's going to be like, okay, clearly this guy has no right to be here. I got an owner saying that he broke in. Yeah, he looks like there's a video of him picking the clock. We're taking this guy out. Whereas if you haven't been tipped off and you're not going there frequently enough, because how often do your property managers swing by vacant properties? Maybe once a week. So a week is fully enough time for the guy to move in a few sofas, get his scuzzy buddies living in there, and his 4 dogs. And so by the time the cop shows up there, you got plausibility. And so that's the low hanging fruit. There's the alarm, and if you buy the course, we give you half off, and it ends up being like $100 or something. It's a really tiny amount, and you can change it from one property to the next. And it's simple and easy, and hardly anybody does it though.
I'm just still so surprised that anywhere in this country, the police would say that, sure, you own the house, but these people get to have it. That's what's been so mind-boggling to me, that there is such a loss of respect for property rights that owners have to put up with squatters until some future date when the courts decide they have to go. It's astonishing to me, and it's got to stop.
It does. But the thing is, Leigh, that it comes back to possession. If you are in possession of something, you are assumed to be the owner of it. The shirt on your back, the pearl necklace you have, it's assumed to be your own if you're in possession of it, unless somebody else can prove otherwise. And if you are in possession of a house, you are assumed to have the right to be there unless somebody can prove otherwise, or it's patently obvious that you don't have the right to be there.
But I own it. I own it.
I believe you. And I don't think anybody's going to make claim to that, to the necklace. But in this case, no matter what state you're in, there's going to be some form of landlord-tenant law. And if tenants have a bundle of rights that are afforded to them as occupants of real property, it's not a bike, it's not a sack lunch, it's a house. And so there's a bundle of rights that's afforded to tenants in any state. And that's why they're able to maintain possession of it after they, stop paying. And if they can fool a cop into thinking that they're a tenant rather than a squatter, they tacitly gain those rights. And it's insane, but it's the convergence of certain laws that have just gone a little overboard. And just like you said, Leigh, like our rights as property owners are being trampled on in this case, but it's with the intention of protecting tenants against bad actors, bad landlords. But has it been overshot? In my opinion, 1,000%.
But it also means if you're in real estate, you better make sure that you've talked to your property manager about landlord tenant laws where you live, so you're aware of what the bundle of rights are in your area so that you can be prepared for all of this. Investors have to pay attention to squatters too. It happens in Airbnbs or other short-term rentals, happens in long-term rentals, and it can happen in your primary residence. And if you're a consumer, then you really got to pay attention to things like your title until we get smarter legislators, frankly, that are able to think their way through full processes. I think we're going to see more scamming before it's all over. George, what's the best way for people to find you, take advantage of your courses, and get some of these details that you are sharing?
Yeah, so if you want to take a look at the course, it's at squatterdefender.com. And for your listeners, Leigh, with the promo code Leigh Brown, spelled just like your name, woohoo, you get 20% off. And then same with Title Fraud Defender. That's at titlefrauddefender.com. That's your title monitoring service. And it's great for investors because we give big discounts to people who own multiple properties. And that also has that same promo code, Leigh Brown. And that's for 20% off. And you can also find me on social. I always tell people I'm very easy to find. Just Google George McCleary, TikTok, LinkedIn, or whatever, and there I am. McCleary Realty and Development is the name of my real estate company. So you can see like development projects I'm working on. This, educating people on title fraud and squatters is kind of my side hustle right now, and I'm going to see where it takes me. But my regular job, my day job, is as a realtor, developer, house flipper. So find me at McCleary Realty and Development on Instagram, on TikTok, and write me a message. I'd be happy to hear from you. And if you've got a crazy squatter story, I'd like to hear from you, because I've become like the source for these crazy stories, and I've consolidated all of it and put it in the Squatter Defender course. I'm going to keep updating it, and so that people are going to know what to do if they have a squatter.
And I'll just point out, I really want y'all to reach out to George if you have a story about how to get rid of your squatters and it's creative, because those sound the most interesting to me. So maybe you have devised a way to send, I don't know, ants into a house, and we all hate ants. So that maybe, I don't know if it'll run anybody off though, but we'll find out. George, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for talking about very uncomfortable topics that people need to be aware of so they can make good decisions. And of course, y'all, you can drop your comments below, reach out to George about the Portland market, about his courses, lots of reasons to reach out to him. And of course, in the show notes, all your contact information. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Leigh.
All right, guys, hit the bell, subscribe for more. I'll see you next time. By the way, friends, don't miss my brand new coaching program at answers.realestate, where you can have access to Leigh Brown, submit your questions, have them answered, meet like-minded professionals, have an entire library to help you build your business no matter what happens in the market. Get signed up today. I promise you'll be glad you did. So if you found value in this episode, please like and subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell, and catch another amazing episode by clicking above. Crazy Shit in Real Estate is also available in all of your normal podcast apps. So if that's where you like to hang out, go find me, click subscribe, and most importantly, leave me a review that says you think I'm awesome, my guests are awesome, or this content is just exactly what you were looking for. And then, by the way, if there's something you need, you want to learn about something, you can comment below anytime. You can also send me a direct message if you need to remain anonymous. No judgment. But anyway, I'll only judge if you forget to subscribe and click. I'll see you next time.